Hello and greetings, everyone. I'm Pastor Edwin Strickland, and I serve as the Senior Pastor of Fellowship of Champions Church International, a worldwide ministry helping people to learn to live out their God-given dreams by walking in love and living by faith. And I get to be your host and your guide for this exciting journey that we're about to take that we call Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. Hello, and good afternoon. Welcome to another live edition of the Ed Talk podcast. I am your host, Pastor Strick, and I'm excited to be here with you once again to continue our conversation about how do we build better swag in our life. Listen, every week we show up here on Tuesdays at noon Central Standard Time. We come together so that we can blend the realms of knowledge, instruction, and faith with real world solutions. And I appreciate those of you who show up every week. I appreciate those of you who like and share, those who tag others in the podcast. I appreciate you. I say this every week, and that is that whether you are on a quest seeking to expand your knowledge base, whether you're just looking to uplift your spirit, or maybe you're looking to find common ground between the practical and the spiritual, you have come to the right place. We are in the midst of something called our Build Better series. And this Build Better series has been so engaging and so insightful. I've gotten so many comments from people asking to either go back and where they can find a previous podcast that connected to this. And this is it's our fourth podcast in this series because this one has two parts. But we first started off talking about how to build better habits, right? And then we talked about how to build better focus. And once we built those right habits and we built the right focus, now we're talking about how do we show up? How do we show up in our jobs? How do we show up at church? How do we show up in our community? How do we show up in order for us to be the best version of ourselves that we can be? And so every week here at Ed Talk, we come together because our goal is to forge those connections. We want to bridge the gaps, and we want to hopefully spark some thought and encourage you to have some curiosity about what it takes to nurture your own soul, so that you can absolutely become the best version of yourself that you can be. And so without any further ado, let's jump into our housekeeping things, and then we'll get right into today's podcast. As you know, every single week, I share with you that there are multiple ways in which you can engage with me. You can engage by going to my YouTube page. If you go to www.pastorstrick.com, that will take you directly to my YouTube page, and you can subscribe there. That way, if you missed the live podcast, you can just come back there later. Usually within 24 hours, it's generated and processed and up on my YouTube page. Also, if you listen to podcasts through some other medium rather than YouTube, you can simply go to www.pastorstrickpodcast, all one word, pastorstrickpodcast.com, and it will take you to a landing page that has a list of all the podcasts that you can hear Ed Talk with Pastor Strick on. Whether you want to connect with me on my personal page, my professional page, or even our church page, you can also do that as well by simply going to Facebook, looking up my name, searching the name of our church, and you will find that information there. Now, the other thing I ask you to do every week is to help me out with a little social media outreach. What is social media outreach? I'm asking you, if you would, to please go and share this broadcast right now. If you're on Facebook, just hit that share button. Also, if you're on Facebook, go ahead and hit that like button, hit the love button, hit that care button, right? Help me out with a little social media outreach. Go ahead and knock on some doors. There may be some people who got busy today. We're getting ready for spring break, and everybody's doing different things and moving around, and maybe they just simply forgot to set their calendar. Go ahead and hit that share button. Go ahead and tag a friend or a family member. Let them know that Ed Talk with Pastor Strick is live, and they need to get in here so they can learn how to build better, so they can build better swag. And so again, I thank you all for joining me in season 3. This is our 4th podcast in season 3, our 3rd topic of our Build Better series. We've talked about building better focus. We've talked about building better habits, and we will continue our discussion today with building better swagger part 2. All right, so let's jump into it. Because as you know, quick recap, last week when we began to talk about what does it mean to build better swagger and why we use that particular word, we said because traditionally when people hear the word swag or they think about swagger, they typically think about manifesting an air of confidence. And what we're talking about is how do you manifest an air of confidence? Because you should have an air of confidence. But we talked about it in terms of not being this false sense of bravado, not this false sense of confidence that you have, that you're putting on for other people, but you yourself don't feel it on the inside. And so then we spent a little time redefining what swagger is for us. And we said that literally swagger for us is about manifesting the real you. When we talk about being full of swag, we're talking about being full of the person who we really are, not some false sense of who we are, not some bravado that we've put on in order to impress other people, but authentically being who we are. And we said that the foundation of that truly comes from 2 things. And we talked about self-belief and we talked about competence, that we have to believe in ourselves. But believe in ourselves come from spending the time to be competent about our abilities, our skills, and our talents. And so I want to just recap that for you real quick, because after we talked about that, we said that there were some things that could absolutely stand in our way. There were some things that could stand in our way and block us from really being who we've been called to be. And we talked about 4 of these things. And the 4 things we talked about was persona, right? We talked about ambition. We talked about security. And we kind of combined that 4th and 5th one. We said fear and pain, and they kind of went together. And when we talked about those, we simply said that persona was the difference between who we are and who we present to the professional world, right? And that those things should match. They should not be diametrically opposed to one another, that who I am should show up authentically in my professional life, in my personal life. It should be who my kids see who I am. It should be who my family sees who I am. And so we had to make sure that we had the right persona. And then we talked about ambition, and we said that while ambition can be good, we defined it as a strong desire to do or to achieve something, and that it typically required some form of determination and hard work. And we had to make sure that our ambitions were of the right volition, that we were going after the right things, that we weren't going after things because it would make us popular. We weren't going after things because it would make us rich, because you can be rich and unhappy. And we said that wasn't a good thing, that we had to have our ambition rooted in the things that we believe that God has told us to go after, right? And I mentioned to you last week that as a pastor, that's always going to be my position. This is Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. And while we don't spend a lot of time going through lots and lots of scripture here on Ed Talk, everything I'm talking about, though, is rooted in this idea that whatever I'm going to pursue, I'm pursuing it because God has directed me to pursue it. And then we talked about insecurity and how insecurity can really cause us all to just stumble over ourselves, because what it is really an uncertainty, or even more importantly, it's an anxiety about who we are. It's a lack of confidence. And again, you can put off this false sense of bravado. You can put off this false sense of confidence and still on the inside be very, very insecure about who you are. And no matter how hard you try, eventually that insecurity of self is going to creep out and it's going to show up to other people. And then you're going to end up looking inauthentic because you've been out here putting off this false sense of who you are when in reality, people can see that you really don't have the confidence that you have. And so we're going to talk about these swagger blockers, right? That's what we talked about last week. These are things that block our swag. They are persona, ambition, insecurity. And then the last two we talked about is fear and pain. And we said that fear wasn't so much this fear of, oh my gosh, I'm afraid. It was this fear that's a result of people judging us or us judging ourselves, sometimes unfairly. It's the apprehension of being judged, rejected, or failing. It's why some people struggle even after they get promoted, even after they get accolades and people tell them how good they are and people tell them what they've done is amazing and they get promoted. They still feel like they're not good enough. They suffer from what some people call the imposter syndrome. They feel like I don't belong here. People are going to find out that I'm not as smart as they think I am. People are going to find out I'm not as talented as they think I am. People are going to find out and they're going to see me for who I am and who I am as a fraud. And the reason people can feel that way, even when everybody else is giving them accolades, even when everybody else is patting them on the back, even when everybody else is cheering for them, is because of that thing we just talked about, insecurity, right? When you have insecurity, when you have a lack of confidence, it breeds this fear of judgment. It breeds this fear of apprehension where you are thinking that you are being unfairly judged or rejected, or you will be rejected, or that you are failing, or that you will fail. And those things end up blocking our swagger. And then this last one, which is pain, it's not the kind of pain like you hit your finger when you're drilling a nail in, right? When you're trying to drive a nail in. No, we're talking about the kind of pain that as a result of the personal stories and the conditioning that we tell ourselves that causes us to be silent and not true to ourselves. Because maybe somebody did reject you. Maybe someone did, think that you weren't as smart as you were or that you weren't as talented. Well, what happens is because you had that insecurity and you had that fear of them judging you, then when they do judge you, it causes you great pain and you spend your time telling yourself that story over and over. And then what happens, you end up authenticating a story that wasn't true about you as though it was. And then you begin to live out this untrue story about your life. And then every place you show up, work, church, home, the country club, the gym, it doesn't matter. You show up as this inauthentic person because of these particular swagger blockers, because of persona, because of the wrong ambition, because of the insecurity, because of the fear, and because of the pain. And then we talked last week about the three things that we must have in our life in order to help us become better than the blockers. And we call those things the swagger drivers. And those swagger drivers, when we talked about them, was about true intention, right? It was about truth, intention, and self-belief. Truth, intention, true, intention, and self-belief. And we define truth. This is just our recap. We define truth as the importance of expressing our true self and our opinions, right? Not being the person who just goes along to get along with everybody. I used the example last week about the movie Coming to America. And we've all seen that scene where Eddie Murphy's getting ready to go back home and marry the person his mother and father have set him up to marry. He asks to speak with her for a few minutes alone, and he begins to ask her some questions. And everything he asks her response is, whatever you like. He asked her, how does she like eggs? How does she like something else? How does she like this? Is whatever you like. And we have to be careful not to become people who go along just to get along. Because what that ends up doing is squashing or squandering who we really are. So we said that if we're going to defeat these swagger blockers, we have to first learn to be true to ourselves and able to truly express ourselves and our own opinions and not see them as less than other people's opinions. And then we talked about intention. the why behind our actions. It is so important for us to be intentional, to know why we do what we do. You know, when we were talking about building better habits, why do you need to build better habits? When we were talking about building better focus, why do you need to build better focus? Now we're talking about building better swagger. The question still is, why do I need to build better swagger? And then in a couple of weeks from now, we'll talk about building better resiliency. And we're going to ask the same question. Why do you need to do it? Because if you can understand the why behind why you do what you do, you can do it even after the desire to do it has gone. Even when I started this weight loss journey that I'm on, my health journey, I had a why for why I wanted to do it. And at first I was motivated and excited to get out and do all of these things. But when the weather started to get colder, when I started to miss the foods I used to eat, when I started to miss drinking the drinks that I used to drink, my coffee, my sodas, my sugary drinks, when I started to miss my late night snacks that I would eat while I was watching Family Feud, I started to miss those things, and the motivation to do the right thing began to wane. The thing that held me down, the thing that kept me going was my intention. It was the why. Why did I do this? Well, I did this because I did not want to be overweight. I did not want to be unhealthy. I did not want to be in my 50s and 60s having to take medication every day. I wanted to live a long life. I wanted to be around for my kids a lot longer. I wanted to be around to eventually see grandkids and maybe even great grandkids someday. That was my why. And when you can fuel your why above the motivation, it helps you to block out anything in your life that comes against your ability to live authentically you. Because remember, we said swag wasn't about how we show up and put on airs. That we defined our swagger as about being authentically true to ourselves. And then the last one is about self-belief. These are the drivers. These are the drivers that are going to drive us past those swagger blockers. It is truth, it is intention, and it is self-belief. And we said that self-belief was about cultivating an unwavering faith in ourselves despite any obstacle that we face. In other words, we have to have a resolute belief that we have the skills, talents, and abilities to do what is necessary in order to meet our goals. And that if I don't possess the skills, the talents, and the abilities today, I can begin to develop them, right? Because developing truth about yourself, developing intention, and developing self-belief are all skills. And if it's a skill, it can be learned. And if it can be learned, then it can be mastered, right? It can be mastered. And so today, what we want to do is we want to continue this discussion about what do we actually need to do in order to build better swag, right? And so today we're going to start. We're talking about how do you embody your swagger? How do you embody it, right? And there are some practical ways in which to do it. And here are the practical ways to do this. I'm going to leave this up as we talk about it. Number one, you got to be able to walk, talk, and feel your swagger. You just have to. You have to get used to being you. You have to get used to being who you are. How do you do that? You learn to walk in it, you learn to talk it, and you learn to feel it. And then number two, we're going to talk about embracing the physical and verbal uniqueness that you possess. Every single one of us, we just as unique as our fingerprint is, as unique as our DNA is, we have a uniqueness about our physical and vocal abilities to produce and to walk in and live in and embody our ability to show up as authentically as ourselves. And then number three, we'll talk about the importance of authenticity when it comes to communication, because communication is so much about how people perceive us. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about accepting and expressing emotions appropriately and confidently. I should have added that word. I just thought of that. Appropriately and confidently, right? Because we don't want to just accept every emotion for what it is, and we don't want to just respond to every emotion every time it arises. We want to do that appropriately, and we also want to do it confidently. And so let's begin by talking about walking in your swagger. How do you walk in your swagger? I'm gonna give you a couple different ways, and this first one may sound it may sound very practical to you, maybe too practical, but I think it's extremely important. Here's the first thing you need to learn to do, and I see this all the time. You need to learn to dress authentically. People say, what? Yes, you need to dress authentically. What do I mean by that? You need to wear clothes that make you feel comfortable and confident, right? You need to wear things that align with your personal style and identity. People don't realize this, but clothing can be a powerful form of self-expression, and it can significantly impact your swagger. I give you a prime example. There's this trend that a lot of men do now, right? And they wear suits, okay? They wear suits, and the suits are kind of like skinny leg pants that stop at their ankle. Nothing wrong with that. I've seen people wear them. They look sharp in them. I personally could never wear that, okay? My wife laughs at me all the time because when it comes to dress, especially when you're talking about a suit, you're talking about, a jacket or something like that, I am much more conservative in my dress than that affords me the opportunity to wear loafers with pants that stop above my ankle and a suit jacket that is short at the waist. I can't wear that. That doesn't make me feel comfortable. Even if you told me I look great, if you said, oh, that suit is the bomb, oh, you look awesome, you look great, no matter how many times you said it, because of what I think I look like in it, that insecurity would always be there. And as a result, as long as I had that on, I would feel differently than my authentic self. Okay, does that make sense? There are times that women are trying to wear things that are trendy, right? And you're trying to wear it because that's what the culture says you should wear, or that's what the new style says you should wear, or it's the right color for the season. I tell people all the time, you need to learn to be authentic to yourself. And being authentic to me is wearing a suit that is not multicolored, okay? Give me a black, give me a brown, give me a blue. It can even be a lighter blue, a navy blue, a dark blue. I might wear something, depending on the occasion, that has a slight window pane in the suit, right? But my suits are going to be straight leg pants that are either with a 1-inch cuff or no cuff in it, right? I'm not going to wear loafers. I'm going to wear some traditional, probably kind of dress shoes. I want a French cuff shirt on if I'm dressing up. I want my jacket to go below my waist. I want it to have 2 vents in the back. That's just what makes me feel comfortable. And I've learned that no matter what I see other people in or what the style is, I have to learn to dress authentically for who I am. Okay, so that's one thing you have to do. Here's your second thing if you're going to walk in your swag. You need to learn about posture and presence. What do I mean? When you walk into a room, you need to practice not having your shoulders bent over, not having your head dipped down. You need to stand tall with your shoulders back and with your head held high. A confident posture not only affects how other people perceive you, but also how you feel about yourself. Whenever I'm in a meeting and I go into a room, one of the first things I always do, no matter who I'm meeting with, if it's a chair that moves up and down, I put my chair all the way to the top. I don't care that I'm 6'3", almost 6'4". I don't care who else is in the room. I raise my chair to the very top. Why? Because when you sit appropriately, with your shoulders back, with your head up, it gives you an air or a sense of confidence. This is especially important when you go into interviews. This is especially important when you're trying to broker deals. This is especially important when you're trying to bring somebody in to a particular partnership with you. People need to see your confidence. They need to see that you believe in you. They need to know that you at least believe what it is that you're talking about. You can also do this by practicing walking with purpose. You can practice owning the space that you move through and maintaining a presence that reflects a self-assuredness, right? Why is this important? Because so many times people interact with you, right, based on their impression of you before they ever get to know you. And so you got to learn that once you've built these habits and you built this focus, now that you're doing all these right internal things, how are you going to project yourself to the world? All right. All right. So that's what you need to do in order to walk in your swagger. Let's talk about how do you talk yourself into your swagger. Okay. We talked about embracing your voice. You have to recognize and appreciate the uniqueness of your voice. Why? Because when you begin to practice speaking out, the more you speak, the more you get comfortable. The more that we literally before the pandemic hit, talking public speaking wasn't a big deal, but going on camera, right? Because I don't know what you're doing right now. I don't know what you're thinking about me right now. I don't know what you're wondering about me. I don't know if you're muting me. I don't know if you're closing the browser and not looking at me. I don't know all of those things. And I used to think about all of those things. So in order for me to get up and speak, I need to be able to see people's faces. I need to be able to see what they were doing. I need to see their body language. But I believe in many ways God used the pandemic to help get me out of that. So I can show up and learn to use my unique voice. My voice is not like my wife's voice. My voice is not like Pastor Nitra's voice. My voice is not like Pastor Ralph's voice. The examples I use won't be like theirs. But there is a group of people out there who my voice resonates with. And the same thing is true for you. There's a group of people out there who your voice, your tone, your pitch, your cadence will resonate with, and they will want to hear what you have to say. That's why you got to be authentically who you are. You can't be a woman out here in ministry trying to be like Sarah Jakes Roberts, right? You can't do it. You can't be out here trying to be like Joyce Meyer. You can't be out here trying to be like Sean Strickland. You can't be out here trying to be like Crystal Robinson or Keyshawn, right? You can't be those individuals. You have to be who you are. You have to be who you are. And when you learn to embrace who you are authentically, the people who are called to your voice will be drawn to you. They'll hear what you have to say. And you'll be more confident about who you are. So when you speak, even those who may not have been initially drawn to you will be drawn to the confidence with which you speak. That draws us to our next thing about authentic communication. When you are talking, you got to learn to speak your truth with clarity and conviction. Authentic communication involves being honest and transparent in your interactions, aligning your words with your true thoughts and feelings. People can tell when you are saying things that you really don't mean. Most people are pretty good about picking up on what you're saying based on what your body language says. You never have to worry about trying to do either or if you will practice doing them both simultaneously. Now, when I say being honest and transparent in your interactions and aligning your words with your true thoughts, I'm not talking about being rude. You can be honest without being rude. In fact, somebody ought to type that in the comment section. Say honesty and rudeness don't go together. Honesty and rudeness don't go together. I don't have to be rude in order to be honest. And I don't have to hide my feelings in order to be nice. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. I can be honest and true in my conversation and in my feelings without being rude, because honesty and rudeness don't go together. All right. Part of that is making sure that I am spending time, though, actively listening to other people. Because sometimes we are responding to people opposed to responding to people based on what they said. Swagger isn't just about speaking. It's not just about being bold. It's also about your ability to listen. It's about your ability to show genuine interest in other people's ideas and perspectives. If you really want to have swag, learn how to make other people feel like they matter. My wife has this expression she uses all the time, and she says, people matter. If people matter, part of your swag, part of your ability to ingratiate those people into your life is by making people feel like they matter. And the way you do that is using your authentic communication, but also part of communication is listening. And when I become an active listener, then this not only enriches the conversations that I'm having, but it also fosters deeper connections. And that's the whole goal of me being authentically myself and building up my swagger, is so that I can build deeper connections with the people I'm supposed to be connecting with. So that's how you walk in it. That's how you talk in it. Now let's talk about how you feel in this swagger. How do you build up this feeling of swagger? Number one is through self-awareness. You must be a self-aware person. We live in a society now where, I promise you, it seems like, and I'm sure it's just because social media is so much more prevalent, that we see so many examples of people who are not self-aware. And when people are not self-aware, they say or do things that are absolutely counterintuitive to what it is that they're actually doing. And so if you're going to have great swag, then you have to cultivate a deep understanding of yourself. You need to know your strengths. You need to know your weaknesses. You need to know your values. You need to know your beliefs. I give you a prime example. There was someone on Facebook just yesterday, and they were talking about their friend who was in this relationship and how they were being treated in this relationship. And they were going off, I mean, literally going off on Facebook about how, if it was them, what they would do, what they wouldn't take, what they wouldn't tolerate, blah, 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 blah. And lo and behold, somebody came into the thread and said, wait a minute, you're talking about your friend doing X, Y, and Z, but you're in a relationship right now where your partner is doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and just blasted them with examples and was like, how can you say this about them when you yourself are living in this same situation? It's because they weren't self-aware. They weren't self-aware. They could look at another situation and say, here's what I would do in that situation. But when they were in the situation, they aren't doing what they say they would do if they were in the situation. And so if you're going to operate and be authentically who you are, you have got to learn how to be self-aware. Okay? At the same time, you also have to be a person who is not only self-aware, but you have to allow yourself what I call some self-compassion. Because the most self-aware people are sometimes the most critical people of themselves. It can be the same thing as denial. It can be, but denial, I think, is really more of a time when, because the question was asked, is that the same thing as denial? And it can be. And here's why I think it can be. But here's why I also think it's a little different. Denial sometimes is this thing of, I know what situation I'm in, but I'm going to purposefully act like I'm not, so that the situation I'm in doesn't injure me, at least mentally or emotionally. When people are absolutely unaware, I don't even think it's denial. I think they simply do not know that what they are talking about in somebody else's life is literally in their life. I don't know that they're in denial. I think they are literally just so unaware of themselves in their own situations that they can see other people's situation and then not even equate it to being their own. So I think they go hand in hand. I think they go hand in hand, denial and also this idea of being unaware, okay? And then the other one is this idea of self-compassion, because I was saying earlier that people who are the most self-aware, they can sometimes be the most critical of themselves. Why? Because they are aware of their shortcomings. They are aware of when they mess up. They are aware of when they've done wrong. And so I tell people who are self-aware that while at the same time you're practicing self-awareness, you need to practice self-compassion. Why? Because self-compassion is about being kind to yourself, especially in those moments of doubt and failure. When you realize you've blown it, when you realize you made a mistake, when you realize you could have done better, that is not the time to beat yourself up. That's not the time to start talking about how dumb you are or how silly you are, or how you can't believe you made that mistake. No, this is the time that you encourage yourself, that you reach down on the inside of you and you begin to build up on and pull out the resiliency that's on the inside of you, that you refer back to that positive self-image that you have built about yourself by being a person who has built better habits, who has built a better focus, right? You have to make sure that you don't spend your time tearing yourself down, that you are aware of your shortcomings, but you practice self-compassion and saying, I'll get it right next time. At least from this situation, I learned. I know what I can do better going forward, because these are essential components of swag, okay? Essential components of swag. The other thing we said we were going to talk about is this idea of embracing physical and vocal uniqueness, right? One of the things you have to learn to do is to celebrate your uniqueness. So everybody who's listening to this live right now, I want you to type this in the comment section. Type, I am unique and it's glorious. Come on. I need you to see it. I need you to type it. I need you to say it. I need you to hear it. I am unique and it is glorious. Okay? We need to learn to celebrate our uniqueness. We don't need 50 other ed talks, you know? We need 50 podcasts, but they don't need to be 50 ed talks. We don't need 50 Keishas. We don't need 50 Kimberlys. We don't need 50 Michelles. We don't need 50 Kristens. We don't need 50 Ralphs. We just need you to be as unique as you can be, because it is glorious when you are your authentic self. God made you in the image of his son, and he put unique talents and abilities in a combination that's on the inside of you that's not on anybody else in this world. And it is glorious when the world gets to experience how unique you really are. So celebrate your uniqueness, okay? Acknowledge and celebrate all the aspects of you. That includes your physical appearance. It includes your voice. I used to hate the way I sounded on tape when I had to listen back. Early in ministry, my pastor, my overseer, used to require us to listen to our messages because he wanted to make sure that we were communicating what we thought we were communicating. And sometimes that's hard to do in the moment. So I would have to listen to myself, and I hated the way I sounded. But then I started thinking, nobody else sounds like that though. There's a unique tenor. There's a unique tone. There's a unique cadence. There's a sequence to the words that I choose to use. And that's who God made me to be. And when God made me that way, I stopped wanting to be Pastor Creflo Dollar. I stopped wanting to be Dr. Ivy Hilliard. I stopped wanting to be Kenneth Copeland. I stopped wanting to be Jerry Savelle. I didn't have to be Bill Winston anymore. I stopped wanting to be those people, and I just wanted to be the best version of myself I could be. And when I became the best version of myself that I was called to be, then the people who were called to me started showing up. I'm encouraging you to be the most unique individual God has created you to be. And when you do, people who are attracted to your business will be attracted to your business. People who are attracted to the books you write will be attracted to the books that you write. People who are attracted to the conferences that you hold will be attracted to the conferences that you hold. The partner that you may be seeking for in life will be attracted to you when you become authentically yourself. The worst thing you would want to be is inauthentic, so that you end up attracting someone who's not really attracted to you, but to the inauthenticity that you created. And so when we talk about building swag, that's what we're talking about. Being unique in who God has created us to be, and being uniquely who we are. We've already talked a little bit about honesty, right? Using authenticity in communication. You want to be honest. You want to ensure that your communication is always rooted in honesty and integrity. Authenticity is not just about what we speak, it's also how we speak. It's about how we interact with other people. How do we foster trust and respect? And how do we strengthen those relationships? If you want to be a person who has a great deal of authenticity where your communication is concerned. Never say anything that you wouldn't put in writing. Don't say something to one person and then say something different to another. Don't be the kind of person who's trying to build relationships by saying whatever the person is you're talking to wants to hear. Because eventually you're going to get in some kind of triangulation and people are going to realize that you're not authentic. That happens in friendship groups all the time. I see it all the time. I think one of the reasons that my friendship groups have been so steady and have been so strong for so long, even though they're not an extensive group, I have a close, tight-knit group of people who I consider to be friends of mine, right? My acquaintance list is really big, but my friend list, my good friends, we are honest to a fault with each other. And as a result, no one is thinking that somebody in our group has said something to one person that they didn't say to another, because we have demonstrated the authenticity of our communication. Okay. And then lastly, we want to talk about this idea of accepting and embracing emotions. And I'm adding this appropriately and confidently, right? It's a thing I call emotional intelligence. If you want your swag to show up and to show out in your life, learn to develop your emotional intelligence. And this doesn't go just for men, although I think a lot of men could spend a lot of time around this subject of emotional intelligence. But women also need to develop emotional intelligence. I think our society is geared toward allowing women to work through this gravitas to getting to emotional intelligence faster and not suppressing it like we do in men. But both genders could absolutely benefit from learning to grow their emotional intelligence. What does it mean when I say grow your emotional intelligence? I'm talking about developing your emotional insights by recognizing, understanding, and managing your emotions in a healthy way. Emotions are good, but we should not be led by them. We should lead them. They should be indicators for us on what we need to look out for, but our emotions should not be our drivers. They should not drive us. Emotions and emotional intelligence express our feelings openly and confidently. It allows us to show vulnerability when appropriate, which can deepen our connections and enhance our authentic expression. This is one of the reasons why I say men should take my class on emotional intelligence. We think we're emotionally intelligent, but until you walk through it and really understand what it's about, till you understand the 4 stages of controlling yourself and how to respond to others, you really don't get a grasp of how not to let your emotions drive you, and you can become the driver of those emotions. Understand this: embodying swagger is about more than just appearing confident. It's about living authentically and embracing your uniqueness. It's about interacting with the world in a way that is true to yourself. It involves a balance of self-awareness, genuine expression, and emotional intelligence, all of which contribute to a powerful and authentic presence. When we talk about building swag, we're talking about living out your best life. We're talking about living out your best life. And one of the things that you can do to do that is to embrace this idea of, how do I live out my best swagger life? How do I do it? I'm going to give you these things. I'm going to talk about one of them. Number one, we kind of talked about this: establishing your truth, living authentically for who you are, right? Cultivating your intention. I'm going to come back and talk about this one. Cultivating your intention. If I'm going to live out my best swagger life, I got to establish my truth. What is my truth? My truth is X, Y, and Z. I know that about myself. It's different from other people. That's cool, but I embrace it because it's who I am. Now, I'm not talking about saying things like, well, I'm just rude. That's just who I am. No, that is a false bravado that you've created in order to protect yourself. It's because you lack emotional intelligence. It's because you're driven by your emotions. We're not talking about that. We're talking about establishing literally who you are based on who God has created you to be. Okay. Number two, we're talking about this idea of cultivating intention. Okay. And we talked about the why earlier, but I want to come back and revisit this idea of cultivating intention and what it means. And then the third thing we said is you need to build self-belief. The way you build self-belief, I've said this before, so I'll say it again, is through competence. Okay. If you had to put together a barbecue grill, okay, and let's say the grill came in a big box with all these hundreds of pieces. The first time you had to put that together, you might would have to spend a great deal of time reading instructions, figuring out which bolt is which, figuring out what part A is, what part B is, how does D fit into F, where does E come in? And it may take you a while to build that barbecue grill. But if you built 100 of them, by the time you got to that 99th and that 100th barbecue grill, you wouldn't even need that piece of paper. You wouldn't need to look at the pictures. You would know exactly what tools, you know the best way to get it to go. You know what goes first, what goes second. And your time in doing it would be so much faster than that first one. Why? Because every time you do it, you build your self-belief. That's why we talked about building better habits. The more time you build the right habits, you're building up your self-belief. It's why we talked about building better focus, because the more time you spend on creating focus and learning how to execute and how to deliver, you're building up your self-belief. The more time you understand about being authentically who you are building up your self-belief. And when you put those three things together, better habits, better focus, and better swag, then you recognize that there are successes that are happening in your life, which is number 4, which is how to recognize and celebrate those swagger moments. Okay. So before I go, let's talk real quick about cultivating intention. When it comes to cultivating intention, I cannot express to you enough that if you want to be successful, and you can find this among billionaires, millionaires, people who are arts and entertainment, people who are politicians, people who are in banking and finance, people who are in politics, people who are in education. Successful people do these 2 things I'm about to tell you. Okay? Listen up if you ain't heard nothing else. Successful people do these 2 things. Number 1, they set daily intentions. They set daily intentions. They start each day by setting a small, achievable goal that they know that they can reach that day. It may be a things to do list. It may be something that they have on a calendar. It may be something that they keep in their mind, but they have every single day a set of, or at least a couple of things that they do every single day that are achievable in that day. It could be related to how they want to feel. It can be related to how they plan to approach a task in the future, or how they intend to act with other people. This practice, done on a daily basis, helps them align their actions with their broader goals and values. I'll go back to when I talked about this thing that I started in August. In August the 1st, I weighed 267 pounds. It was the heaviest I had ever personally been in my life. And I made the decision that I did not want to be that heavy. Number 1, I didn't like the way it looked on me. Number 2, I knew that it was adding to me getting closer and closer to those numbers where my doctor was going to start talking about high blood pressure. He was going to start talking about me being pre-diabetic. He was going to start talking to me about my A1C numbers, my A1C numbers, the high cholesterol numbers, whatever they call it, and all of these other things that I did not want to have to take medication for. They were lifestyle diseases, right? They weren't diseases that were genetically related. They were things that I was eating my way into. And so I made the decision that I was going to lose the weight. Okay. In August, I didn't put a number on it. But by September 1st, I said, okay, my goal is to weigh 180 pounds. Okay. And that means I would have lost, I think it's 87 pounds or something like that if I hit my goal. And so I started this plan where I worked backwards, right? If I want to weigh X amount of weight by March the 15th, and that was my date. Somebody says, why in the world did you pick March 15th? It's when my spring break starts. And I said, before I go on spring break, I want to weigh at least 180 pounds. I said, okay, how am I going to get to 180 pounds if I'm 267 on August 1st? Okay. So I went back and I did this backwards design plan. How many pounds do I need to lose each week? How many pounds do I need to lose each month? How many pounds do I need to lose every 3 months? How many pounds do I need to lose in 6 months? Okay. And I went back and I said, okay, now that I got the numbers, what's going to be my eating plan? Okay. And all that stuff is good. All that's good. But what was my daily intention? My daily intention was this. And I said it to myself all the time. These miles aren't going to walk themselves. That was my daily intention every single day, because I knew that walking was going to be part of my plan in which to lose weight. These miles aren't going to walk themselves. I'd wake up in the morning, and after I did my prayers and said hello to my wife, I'd say, all right, these miles aren't going to walk themselves. What was I doing? I was setting my intention that I was walking that day. The days that it was cold, the days it was windy, the days that it was raining, every day I had to set that daily intention. And do you not know that here we are on March the 12th, okay? March the 12th, 3 days till I'm supposed to reach my goal of 180. And I'm sitting here talking to you today at 177. At 177, 177 pounds. And I got 3 days to go. Why? It started because I set my daily intentions. I've now officially, as of today, lost 90 pounds. Why? I feel better. I'm healthier. Why? Because I set that daily intention. That is my swag, being authentically who I am. Who I am. I set the goal and I met it. Why? Because I cultivated the intention. Now, yours may not be weight loss. Yours may be starting a business. Yours may be going back to school. Yours may be writing a book. Yours may be becoming better organized. Whatever it is that you know that you need to do because it's a part of who you are, you need to set a daily intention so that you can get after it every single day. And then after you set the daily intention, then you use this next thing, because I said it was going to be 2. You need to use something I call the feedback loop. The feedback loop. What is a feedback loop? A feedback loop is simply a mechanism that you use to review your intentions every single day. So there were some days that I set my intention to walk, right? And I said I was going to walk at noon. I didn't feel like it at noon. I said I was going to walk at 3. I didn't really feel like it at 3. And then by this time, it was getting dark about 5 or 5:30. I didn't want to walk. And I was like, oh, man, it's dark. I didn't walk. So now I'm using my feedback loop. Did you set your intention? I did. Did you walk at 12? I did not. Did you walk at 3? I did not. Did you walk at 5? I did not. So what are you going to do to live up to your intention? Okay, that's my feedback loop. I'm going to get up and go to Planet Fitness and walk on a treadmill. I did not let the day go without reviewing my daily intention. Because if you let the day go without your feedback loop, then you can just say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get to it the next day. I'll get to it. Your feedback loop is designed to close the loop on what you said your daily intention was going to be. My daily intention may be I'm going to write at least 1 paragraph to my book. Did you write it today? No, I did not. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to get up and go do it right now. Your feedback loop is designed to close the gap between what you said you were going to do and what you actually did. This feedback loop is a reflection that can help you refine your intentions to be more aligned to your true self. And so if you take nothing away from what we've been talking about, especially on today, I want you to hear about cultivating intention. If you are going to live out your best swagger life, these are the things you need to do. You need to establish your truth. That's the beginning basis. You need to cultivate intentions. And the way you do that is by setting daily habits and by participating in the feedback loop process you do with yourself at the end of each day. And then you need to build that self-belief. How do you build that self-belief? By getting more competent. How do you get more competent? By doing the things you said you were going to do every single day. And then you need to recognize and celebrate those swagger moments. You need to acknowledge your growth. Clap for yourself. My wife used to say to me, because she kind of got on to me because I knew what my ultimate goal was. And there would be some weeks where I would only lose 2 or 3 pounds. But there would be some weeks I would lose 5 or 7. There would be some days that I thought I should have lost weight, and I actually was up a pound or 2. When I first went from walking to running again, my body started to get inflamed, and I didn't realize what was happening. And the more I was running, the more my body was getting inflamed. But once I kept the running up and the inflammation went away because my body wasn't used to that kind of trauma, the pounds began to drop. But I had to stay true to the intention, which was those miles weren't going to walk themselves. I had to do it every day, whether I was seeing a scale victory or not. Some days I had to celebrate my non-scale victories. What was my non-scale victories? The fact that my weight didn't drop, but my pant size was going down. My shirt size was going down. I was losing that extra fat on the back of my neck. It's amazing where you hold fat in your body. My feet started not to be as wide. All kinds of things started happening. And I learned to celebrate all of those while I was walking toward that goal of 180, right? So you have to acknowledge your growth. You have to celebrate yourself and not get down on yourself when things aren't happening. My wife would tell me, you need to celebrate the things that are happening. You lost 3 pounds this week. That's great. Anything above 0 is good. If you didn't make the goal this week, then you'll get it the next week. And you have to learn to celebrate your growth. You also have to learn to share your experiences. Sharing your experiences with friends, family, or mentors can help validate your feelings of accomplishment. I didn't post a lot about my journey, and some of that was because I didn't want to be that guy who was always posting about what he's doing. So I would post some milestones. I would post a couple of things that said, you know what, started here, hit this milestone. I'm working here, hit this milestone. When I first walked my first 100 miles in a month, I said, hey, I did it. Next time I said, hey, I did 125. The third month when I walked 150 miles, that's the last time I posted about the miles, because like, hey, I've done it now, okay? But you have to be willing to share those experiences. And watch this. If you got people around you who don't want to hear about your journey and don't want to hear about your experiences and celebrate you, you might want to find you some new friends, because your true friends want to hear about your celebrations. They want to hear about you obtaining your goals. They want to hear about you doing the things that you've been called to do, right? And then lastly, you want to reflect on the impact that you're doing. Reflect on how these swagger moments have impacted your life. Reflect on how they could help other people by you sharing your stories. Understanding the positive feedbacks and the positive effects that motivate you to seek out other moments like it, because then it'll propel you again to begin to work on other things that will help you build more self-belief, that will help you cultivate more intentions, that will help you establish that truth so that you get to become the best version of yourself. So as we wrap up today, I want to encourage each and every one of you who listen to this podcast, whether part A or part B, whether you listen to building better focus, whether you listen to building better habits, I want you to sit down and think, what do you need to do? What is your plan of action so that you can embrace your true self? What do you need to do so that you can unleash your swagger at work? What can you do to unleash it at home? What can you do to unleash it in every environment you walk into? I want you to think about how you being authentically you is not just about feeling good about yourself, but it's about reaching into yourself and gravitating and using this powerful tool of authenticity that can absolutely transform your life, transform your work, transform the people around you, and allow you to show up in a place that causes you to have the best swag ever. Listen, I want to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in. I want to thank you for this. Part A can be found on any of my platforms. You can go to YouTube. If you go to www.pastorstrick.com, it will take you directly to my YouTube channel, and Part A is there. Part A is there, or Part 1, however I named it. You can find it there. You can listen to it. You can even go back and listen to the very beginning of this series, because remember, this series was about building better habits, was our first podcast. We then talked about building better focus, because we wanted to talk about the art of execution. How do we execute? Because sometimes we can have such great plans, but such poor execution. And then we came back last week and started talking about building better swagger, and we finished it up this week. So there are 3 of the 4-part series that we've already talked about. I should mention to you that Ed Talk will be out next week. Ed Talk will be out next week. We will be back on March the 26th, Tuesday, March the 26th at noon Central Standard Time, where we'll be talking about how to build better resiliency. We're going to talk about how to bounce back. How do we face trouble? And this is going to go so good with what we've been teaching at our church about managing disappointment. And even what we taught on Sunday about unleashing your faith, right? How do you unleash your faith for the supernatural? Building resiliency is going to go right in touch with that. So go ahead and mark your calendars right now for March the 26th at 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time. That's 1 o'clock on the East Coast. That's 11 o'clock Mountain Time and 10 o'clock on the West Coast. Mark your calendar, because I'll be back to host you with another podcast as we talk about how to build better resiliency. Listen, I appreciate everyone who's come. I appreciate everyone who's taken a chance to listen. And if this blessed you, do me a favor and share it. Before you go ahead and hit that heart button, hit that like button if you hadn't, and share this broadcast with other people who you know might benefit from learning how to build better swag. I'm your host, Pastor Strick, and I'll see you on March 26th.